Hello, 7th and 8th grade. So this video is for April the 2nd, which is Thursday. And like we begin every video, we're going to start off with our mug shot. So I'm going to go ahead and scoot over and let you guys make those corrections. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to. Okay, so I'm going to go over with my red marker. The first thing that needs to be corrected is the L in lobsters, because remember, this is the beginning of a sentence, so the L needs to be capital. It needs to be capitalized. Lobsters walks needs to be turned into walk. Lobsters walk around on 8 needs to be spelled out instead of just writing out the number. Legs, just as spiders do. And then we're going to end the sentence with a period. So if you got all of those right, then great job. We're going to go ahead and move on. Okay, so for today, you're going to need to go ahead and get out your list, your spelling list 23. You're also going to need to go ahead and get out your grammar worksheet, lesson 93, which is on pages 293 and 294. And then you're going to need to go ahead and take out your literature assignment that is titled Amazing Habits of Ants, which is on pages 171 through 173. Okay, so go ahead and get out your lesson 93, which is on pages 293 and 294. You're going to want to have that in front of you right now. So the first thing we're going to talk about is adding prefixes. So it says, when adding a prefix to a word, simply keep the spelling of the word and attach the prefix. If the prefix ends in the same letter as the first letter of the word, then keep both letters. So it's pretty simple, guys. So basically, when we're looking at prefixes, we're just going to go ahead and add the prefix to the word. So it's saying that even if the prefix ends in the same letter as the first letter of the word, we're still going to keep both letters and just add that prefix. So I wrote some examples on the board for you guys, and these examples are also on your lesson 93. It's on page 293 of your lesson. So the first example that I have on the board, the word is happy, and then we have the prefix un. So remember, when we add a prefix to a word, all we're going to do is we're going to simply keep the spelling of the word and just attach the prefix to it. So we're going to combine those two things and just make them one word. So un is our prefix and happy is our word. So all we're doing is combining the two together and making one word. So it would be unhappy, which is unhappy. So you see, all we did was combine the prefix and the word and then just made it into one. Okay, so now let's look at our second example. So in this example, co is our prefix and then operates is our word. Okay, so in this, all it's saying is all we're doing is adding the prefix to the word. And it says, if the prefix ends in the same letter, such as this, as the first letter of the word, so the prefix is ending in the same letter as the word is, and the word is starting in the same letter. So they're both the prefix is ending in O, and then the word is starting in O. So it's saying if the prefix ends in the same letter as the first letter of the word, then keep both letters. So we're going to keep both of these O's. So all we're doing is combining this prefix to the word. So we're just going to make it into one. So it would be cooperate. Cooperate. And again, these examples are on, they're also on page 293 of lesson 93. Go ahead and flip the page over to 294 because we're going to be looking at the top of the page right now. Okay, so right now we're going to talk about suffixes and final Y. So when a word ends in a consonant plus Y, we change the Y to an I before adding a suffix. So I'm going to pause this right there, and I'm going to have us look at the first example. And again, all these examples are on page 294 in your book. So our word is fly, and then we have a suffix, which is es. So let's read that first sentence again. It says, when a word ends in a consonant plus Y, change the Y to an I before adding a suffix. So in the word fly, when we look at this, fly ends with a consonant plus a Y, right? So it's saying that whenever we have a consonant plus Y at the end of a sentence, then we would need to change this Y to an I before adding the suffix. So then the word would become flies, Flies. So again, when a word ends in a consonant plus Y, we would take off that Y and change it to an I before we add the suffix. And then this is our word, flies. Okay, so now let's look up here. It says, when the word ends in a vowel plus Y, you would keep the Y. Okay, so let's look at example number 2. Right here, remember, A, E, I, O, U are and sometimes Y, are all of our vowels. And then anything in the alphabet, and everything in the alphabet except A, E, I, O, U, and Y are consonants. So when we look at key is our word, and then our suffix is S. So again, it says when the word ends in a vowel plus Y, keep the Y. So key ends in a vowel plus Y, because A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y are our vowels, right? So E is our vowel here. So E is followed by a Y at the end of the sentence. So whenever this happens, when we have a word ending in a vowel plus Y, then we would keep the Y and just add the suffix. So our word would be keys, K-E-Y-S. Okay, so let's move on to the last sentence. It says, if the suffix begins with an I, then we would keep the Y. Okay, so let's look at our example, example, number 3. So our word is fly, and then we have a suffix ing. So in this sentence, it's saying if the suffix begins with an I, then we would keep the Y. So if you look at our suffix, it's beginning with an I. So it's saying when this happens, then we would keep our Y when we put them together. So then our word would become flying, F-L-Y-I-N-G. Because remember, our suffix began with an I, so that means we keep the Y in fly and then just add the suffix to the word. So it's flying. And then if you look at the last example, playing, it's the exact same thing that we just did in flying. So play is our word, and then you have ing, which is our suffix. So our suffix begins with an I, therefore we would keep the Y in play and then just add the suffix. So it'd be playing, P-L-A-Y-I-N-G. Okay, so now we're going to talk about suffixes and silent E. So if you look over here, it says, when adding a suffix that begins with the consonant to a word that ends in silent E, you would keep the E. So we have an example right here, and our example, the word is achieve, and then we have our suffix is meant. So again, let's read this again. It says, when adding a suffix that begins with a consonant, so remember, consonants are everything in the alphabet except vowels, and our vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. So when adding a suffix that begins with a consonant to a word that ends in silent E, we would keep the E. So in this case, our suffix begins with a consonant. M is a consonant. And then achieve ends with a silent E. So when you say achieve, you don't hear that E, it's silent. So in this case, we have our suffix beginning with a consonant, and then we have our word ending with a silent E. So in this case, we would keep the E in achieve, and then just add the suffix to that word. So it'd be achievement, A-C-H-I-E-V-E-M-E-N-T. Okay, now look over here. It says, when adding a suffix that begins with a vowel or Y to a word that ends in silent E, drop the E. Okay, so let's look at our suffix. Our suffix is ing. So right here it's saying when adding a suffix that begins with a vowel, so our suffix here, remember A-E-I-O-U and sometimes Y are vowels. So when we're looking at our suffix, it's beginning with a vowel because I is a vowel. So when we have a suffix that begins with a vowel or Y to a word that ends in a silent E, so let's look at give. That you say, whenever you say the word give, you can hear it ends with a silent E. You can't hear that E in the word. So we have our suffix beginning with a vowel, which is I, and then we have our word ending in a silent E. So whenever this happens, then we would drop the E. So our word would be giving, G-I-V-I-N-G, because since our suffix it began with a vowel and then our word ended with a silent E, we would drop that E and then just add the suffix. So it'd be giving, G-I-V-I-N-G. Okay, now look here. It says when adding L-Y to a word that ends in L plus a silent E, then we would drop the LE. Okay, so look at our example here. Our word is possible, and then our suffix is ly. So it's saying when we look at a word and that ends, so it's saying here that when adding ly to a word that ends in L plus silent E, then we would drop the LE. Okay, so if you look at our example, our word is possible, and then our suffix is ly. Okay, so whenever we have a suffix of ly, then we need to look at our word, and if we have this word ending with L and a silent E, then we would drop the LE. So if you say possible, whenever you pronounce that word, you can't hear that E, so that E is silent. So we have a silent E plus an L, therefore we would drop the LE in possible, and then we would add our suffix, which is ly, and our word would become possibly, P-O-S-S-I-B-L-Y. Okay, and then if you look down here, it says when adding a suffix that begins with A or O to a word that ends in CE or GE, then we would keep the E. Okay, so our word in this example is change, and our suffix is able. So it's telling us that whenever we have a suffix beginning with A or O, such in this case, our suffix is beginning with A, because our word is able, then if we're adding this to a word that ends in CE or GE, then we would keep the E. And in this case, our word, change, ends with a GE. So therefore, we would keep the E in change. So we'd keep this E, and then it'd be changeable. So again, that's because our suffix began with an A, and then our word ended with a GE. So therefore, we would keep this E, and then we would just add the suffix to the word. So it'd be changeable, C-H-A-N-G-E-A-B-L-E. Okay, so our last rule on suffixes and silent E is when adding a suffix that begins with a vowel to a word that ends in a double E or an OE, we would keep the E. Okay, so if we look at our example, our word is canoe, and our suffix is ing. So if we look at our suffix, this is beginning with a vowel, because I is a vowel, right? So our suffix begins with a vowel, so now let's look at our word. And our word ends with an OE, because it says a word that ends in a double E or OE, then we would keep the E. So in this case, our word canoe ends with an OE. So since our suffix starts with a vowel and our word ends in OE, then we would keep the E in canoe. And then we would just add the suffix to that word. So our word would become canoeing, C-A-N-O-E-I-N-G. Okay, so go ahead and look on page 294. So we already went over all of the rules together, so now we're just going to go over exercise 2 and do a little bit of that together. So exercise 2 says, use the spelling rules in this lesson to spell the words indicated. So all we're doing is just using the rules that we just learned and applying them to exercise 2. So let's go ahead and look at the first example that's done for us. Okay, so our first example, our word is state, and then our suffix is mint. Okay, so in this case, remember, when we add a suffix that begins with a consonant to a word ending in a silent E, then we would keep the E. So in this case, our suffix is beginning with a consonant. And then we have our word, state, you don't hear that E. So therefore it ends with a silent E, right? That E is silent. So when that happens, then we would keep our E. So whenever we have a suffix that begins with a consonant and a word that ends with a silent E, then we would keep that E. So therefore, our answer would be statement. So S-T-A-T-E-M-E-N-T, because we kept that E, remember? Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at number 1. Okay, pre is our prefix, and then wash is our word. So remember, when dealing with prefixes, it's super simple. All you have to do is just combine that prefix to the word. So remember, when we add prefixes, all we're doing is we're keeping the spelling of the word, and we're just attaching the prefix. It's as simple as that. So all we would do is just combine those two together. So you would combine your prefix with your word, wash, and then just make it one. So it would be pre-wash. That would be your answer. P-R-E-W-A-S-H, pre-wash. That is the answer for number 1. Okay, now let's look at number 2. So our word in this, in number 2 is like, and then we have a suffix of able, all right? So for this, remember when adding a suffix beginning with a vowel or Y to a word ending with a silent E, then we would drop the E. So in this case, let's look at the suffix. So we have a suffix that is beginning with a vowel, right? Because A is a vowel. So, and then we have a word like that ends with a silent E. You can't hear the E in like. So we have a suffix that begins with a vowel, and then we have a word like that ends with a silent E. So when that happens, then we would drop the E, okay? So all we're doing is we're dropping the E on like, and then we're just adding able to the word. So it'd be likable, L-I-K-A-B-L-E, and that is your answer for number 2. Okay, so last one we're gonna do together, number 3. Okay, number 3, our word is reply, and then we have ES, which is our suffix. So for this one, remember when we have a word that ends in a consonant, or plus Y, when we have a word that ends in a consonant plus Y, then we would change the Y to an I before adding the suffix. So look at the word, reply. So reply ends with a consonant plus a Y, because remember, consonants are everything in the alphabet that aren't vowels. So reply ends with a consonant plus a Y. So what we're going to do in this case is just change that Y to an I before adding the suffix. So then our answer would be replies, R-E-P-L-I-E-S. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys finish the rest of exercise 2 on your own. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or message me on GroupMe, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And then really quickly, before I end this video, I wanted to go over your classwork with you. So for today, you're going to need to complete Grammar Worksheet Lesson 93, which is on page 293 and 294. And you're going to need to complete the back of your Grammar Worksheet Lesson 93. So, and that's exercise 2. So all you need to do for today for your Grammar Worksheet Lesson 93 is complete exercise 2. And then you are also going to need to complete your literature assignment that is titled Amazing Habits of Ants, that is on page 171 and 173. So you're going to need to complete the Think It Through on this literature assignment, numbers 1 through 5. And then lastly, I want you guys to write a 1 to 2 page story. It could be on any topic that includes 10 of your vocabulary words from any of your spelling or vocabulary list that you've had already. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me, and I will answer those questions that you have.